See, you don't quit it, and you don't quit in sports. You retire. You don't get to quit. It's not an option. See, someone told me that a long time ago. That ain't even an option. And the person told me that, he ain't here anymore. He died. This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. I'm your host, Randall Tevis. We are now entering Week 15 of the NFL season, and of course, we have our Christmas Day games coming up just next week. However, with this week, we still do have some exciting games, as there will be 2 games played on Saturday, as well as a game played on Thursday, and a full slate of games for Sunday, as well as a Monday night game. That's right, we have 4 days of football in this Week 15 matchup. So starting out with Week 14, the previous week's games, I correctly predicted 12 games and incorrectly predicted 4 games for a record of 12-4, as well as my lock of the week, the Tennessee Titans did beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, and my upset of the week was the Los Angeles Chargers beating the Atlanta Falcons, which also happened. So if you include those, it was a very successful week last week. And of course, to cap off the games from last week, we had that epic game Monday night between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns, where Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens literally took the Browns to the Super Bowl. So no, the Baltimore Ravens did win that game. Like I said, it was a good fourth quarter game if you watched it. So it was pretty exciting. So now moving into our Week 15 matchups. Starting out with Thursday night, we have the Los Angeles Chargers going into Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. And this game will once again be my upset of the week, as I am picking the Chargers to play spoiler and really upset the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders, of course, do have playoff aspirations, but losing this game and dropping to a record of 7-7 is really going to be a big blow to their playoff hopes. And so, after this game, the Las Vegas Raiders will almost quite be eliminated from playoffs, as there would just be 2 games left, and I don't think that's going to be enough, even if they won out after this loss, to quite make it to the playoffs. But like I said, here on Thursday Night Football, I am picking the Los Angeles Chargers to beat the Las Vegas Raiders. For our Saturday matchups, we have first the Buffalo Bills going into Denver to take on the Broncos. Now, if you ask me, I think Buffalo is probably one of the hottest teams right now. Josh Allen is playing terrific. They're running the ball and they're playing a little bit of defense. Of course, they did beat Pittsburgh last week, and the week before that, they did beat the 49ers. So take that for what it is. Denver did win last week as well, as they beat the Carolina Panthers. But overall, Buffalo is one of the best teams in the entire NFL. They're not going to lose here to Denver on Saturday football with the whole world watching. I'm picking Buffalo to beat Denver on Saturday afternoon, I believe it is. The next matchup on Saturday sees the Carolina Panthers going into Green Bay to take on the Packers. Now, there is some arguments to be made that Green Bay is the best team in the NFC, but overall, I still wouldn't give them the title of being the best team in the NFL. Buffalo and probably Kansas City right now are those top 1 and 2 teams. I'm really hoping that those 2 teams do face off in the AFC Championship game, but that remains to be seen, and we'll talk about that later on. But overall, Carolina going into Green Bay. Carolina just lost last week to the Denver Broncos. I don't think they're going to win here against Green Bay in this Week 15 matchup. I have the Green Bay Packers beating the Carolina Panthers. Now moving into our Sunday morning games. First off, we have the Seattle Seahawks going into Washington to take on the Washington football team. Now, Washington's been playing some really good football lately, led, of course, by quarterback Alex Smith. However, I do not think they quite have the firepower to keep up with Seattle. I think Seattle is pretty good overall, offense, defense, and special teams. I think Russell Wilson is a legit MVP candidate. I don't think he will be the MVP after turning the ball over so much lately, but he definitely is a legitimate MVP candidate. So I'm going to pick the Seattle Seahawks here to win on the road and go into Washington and win this game. So Seattle is going to beat Washington. The next matchup sees the Cleveland Browns going into New York to take on the Giants. Now, if you're the New York Giants, this is almost a must-win game if you still want to stay competitive in the division. After this game, again, there will only be 2 more games left. However, I am going to pick the Cleveland Browns to come in here and beat the New York Giants. I think Cleveland is a very good team this year. They could do it on the offense and defense. Baker Mayfield was able to bring their team back again on that Monday night matchup with the Ravens. So he's even shown that he can bring a team back. I think Cleveland's just a better overall team here. I'm picking the Cleveland Browns to beat the New York Giants. The next matchup is a battle of NFC North foes as the Chicago Bears go into Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Now, both of these teams are currently on the outside of the playoff picture looking in. Both of these teams are hoping that if some balls bounce their way and they kind of win out, they may be able to sneak into a playoff spot. And so between these two teams, I think that Chicago has the better defense. But quarterback-wise, running back-wise, wide receiver-wise, overall, on the offensive side, Minnesota is the better team. And for that reason, I am going to pick Minnesota to beat the Chicago Bears. So I have the Vikings beating the Bears in this Week 15 matchup and really keeping the Vikings' playoff hopes alive while almost completely diminishing the Bears' playoff hopes. The next matchup for Sunday morning sees the New England Patriots going into Miami to take on the Dolphins. Now, again, the Dolphins also have playoff hopes. They haven't made it to the playoffs in a few years, whereas New England's been literally a staple in the playoffs. And so both of these teams do still have playoff hopes, but I have the Dolphins winning here and absolutely shattering the Patriots' hopes of making it into the playoffs. This is really going to run a string of, I think it's like 18 straight years that the Patriots have made it to the playoffs. And so this game will officially eliminate them from playoff contention as the Dolphins give the Patriots a loss. The next matchup sees the Jacksonville Jaguars going into Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Listen, Jacksonville, you're not a very good team. You've lost 13 straight games. Baltimore still hoping to make it into the playoffs. Again, they're on the outside of the playoff picture looking in right now. Not much to say. The Ravens are the better team overall in every facet of the game. So I'm picking the Ravens to beat the Jaguars here. The next matchup is a battle of NFC South teams as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go into Atlanta to take on the Falcons. Now, I don't think this is going to be quite a big of a blowout as some people believe it's going to be, and Tampa Bay handing the Falcons the loss. I think it's going to be a close game, and it's going to come down to whoever makes the least mistakes. And right now, Matt Ryan cannot stop making mistakes at crucial times. And so that may ultimately lead to the Buccaneers win. Maybe it's a last-minute field goal. Maybe it's a come-from-behind win. I don't know. I'm picking the Buccaneers to win this game. But it's going to be a close game. I think Atlanta can keep it competitive. And so it should be a good and exciting game. But again, I have the Buccaneers beating the Falcons. The next matchup sees the two bird teams playing each other as the Philadelphia Eagles go into Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Now, Jalen Hurts got his first career start last week, and he did win the game in a big upset fashion as he beat the New Orleans Saints. I think that Arizona is going to be a little bit more prepared for Jalen Hurts, as Jalen Hurts essentially is the same quarterback that Kyler Murray is. And of course, that defense has been seeing Kyler Murray, shred defenses all year long, especially in practice as well. So I think Arizona is going to be a little bit more prepared and ready to take on the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. And for that reason, I am picking the Arizona Cardinals to win this game. Excuse me. I think so long as Arizona can get their offense going again, they could be a scary playoff team if they make it to the playoffs. Again, winning this game against the Eagles is going to put them one step closer to returning to the playoffs for the first time in, about 5 to 8 years. So I have the Cardinals beating the Eagles here. The next matchup for Sunday morning is probably the game of the week, I would say, as the Kansas City Chiefs go into New Orleans to take on the Saints. Now, before New Orleans' loss last week, this was going to be the battle of the two number 1 seeds in a potential Super Bowl matchup. Now, this still has the potential to be a Super Bowl matchup. However, Drew Brees is still not going to be the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And for that reason, I don't think Taysom Hill and that offense can keep up with the Kansas City Chiefs offense and their firepower. So I'm picking the Chiefs to win here and beat the Saints. Now, I do think that the one kryptonite to the Kansas City Chiefs is a good running attack. And so if New Orleans is able to run the ball and really control the clock and keep their Mahomes and company off the field, whether that's running the ball 40 times or so, I think if they are able to successfully do that, then they do have a chance here of upsetting the Chiefs and winning this game. But I don't think that's quite going to happen, and I have the Chiefs winning this game against the Saints. Going into... Sorry. Yeah, oh well. Our next... Sorry, I'm getting all confused. Our last Sunday morning game sees the Houston Texans go into Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Now, Houston was just dealt a big blow. They weren't going to make it to the playoffs, but they were just dealt a big blow when Deshaun Watson left that game at the end of the game last week and appears to be injured. And it seems like he's not going to be the starting quarterback this week when Houston goes into Indianapolis. And so with that being said, I think the Colts can really handle business and are going to win the game here against the Texans. And this game is going to be my lock of the week, as I believe the Colts can handle the Houston Texans with relative ease. So again, my lock of the week is the Colts beating the Texans. Now going into our Sunday afternoon matchups, the first one on slate is the San Francisco 49ers going into Dallas to take on the Cowboys. Both of these teams have very slight playoff chances right now. Both of these teams probably would have to win out just to have a chance at making the playoffs. And well, ultimately, I don't think that's going to happen. But with that being said, I think the better team here is, again, the San Francisco 49ers. I think even with Andy Dalton at quarterback for Dallas, they just aren't able to move the ball effectively enough. And San Francisco has shown the propensity to actually make a few plays when it matters. And they have been able to move the ball against some of these teams. And so for that reason, I'm going to pick the San Francisco 49ers to win this game here against the Dallas Cowboys and really crush the Cowboys' hopes, any hope that they had of making the playoffs. So I'm picking the 49ers to beat the Cowboys here. Let's face it, the 49ers are a much better team on the road this year than they have been at home. They still, to this point, only have one home victory on the entire season. Our next Sunday afternoon matchup sees the New York Jets going into Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Not much to say here. The Jets are still a winless team. The Rams are, right now, a division leader. So I'm picking the Rams here to beat the Jets. Not much to say here. I think there was one game I did skip over. The Detroit Lions going into Tennessee to take on the Titans. I'm picking Tennessee to win that game against the Lions as well. And then our Monday night matchup is the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, Cincinnati still doesn't have a good quarterback on their roster right now after the injury to Joe Burrow. And so Pittsburgh is the better team. They have a dominant defense, probably the number one defense in the entire league. And for that reason, if it's Brandon Allen starting at quarterback for the Bengals, or if it's anybody else, whoever it is, their life is going to be very difficult with that Pittsburgh defense. And so I'm picking the Pittsburgh Steelers to win in Cincinnati. And so just to run through all my matchups again, starting on Thursday night, we have the Chargers upsetting the Raiders as my upset of the week. Going into Saturday, we have the Bills beating the Broncos and the Packers beating the Panthers. And then Sunday morning, I have the Seattle Seahawks beating the Washington football team, Chicago beating Minnesota. No, sorry, other way around. Minnesota beating Chicago, Miami beating New England, Baltimore taking care of Jacksonville, Tampa Bay going into Atlanta to beat the Falcons, Arizona taking care of business against the Eagles, the Saints losing to the Chiefs, Tennessee taking care of business against the Detroit Lions, Indianapolis beating the Texans as my lock of the week. And then going into our Sunday afternoon games, I have San Francisco beating Dallas, the Rams beating the Jets. And then into our Sunday night game, I have the Cleveland Browns beating the New York Giants. And for our Monday night matchup, the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's basically a run-through of the Week 15 matchups. Now, the last thing I wanted to do was talk about this playoff picture. As it stands right now, the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC are the number 1 seed. The Steelers hold on to the number 2 seed. the Buffalo Bills 3 seed, the Tennessee Titans 4 seed. Those are all of right now the division leaders. And then we get into our 3 wild card teams, the Cleveland Browns sitting at seed number 5, the Indianapolis Colts at number 6, the Miami Dolphins at number 7. And then we have these sort of bubble teams, the teams that right now are on the outside looking in if the season ended today. We have the Baltimore Ravens at the number 8, the Las Vegas Raiders number 9, and the New England Patriots at number 10. Now, looking at the Kansas City Chiefs, they have a game this week against the New Orleans Saints, and the next 2 weeks against the Atlanta Falcons and against the Los Angeles Chargers. I see them winning 2 out of these 3 games and finishing with the number 1 seed at a record of 14-2. The Pittsburgh Steelers, number 2 seed, they have a game this week against the Bengals, next week against the Indianapolis Colts, and then in the last week, week 17, against the Cleveland Browns. I have them winning only 1 of the remaining 3 games and finishing with a record of 12-4, and that'll give them the number 3 seed. So my number 2 seeded team is the current number 3 seed, the Buffalo Bills. They have a game this week against the Broncos, next week against the Patriots, and then finishing up against the Miami Dolphins. They're going to win 2 out of these 3 games and finish with a record of 12-4, and again end up with the number 2 seed. The current wildcard team, the Indianapolis Colts, are going to end up being the division winner in the AFC South and end up with the number 4 seed. They have games against the Houston Texans, Pittsburgh Steelers, and Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they're going to sweep all 3 of these games and finish with a record of 12-4. The number 5 seed is still the current number 5 seed, the Cleveland Browns. Nothing's going to change with them. I have them winning out against the Giants, against the Jets, and against the Pittsburgh Steelers and finishing with a record of 12-4. But due to tiebreakers, they're not going to be able to win the division against the Steelers. The Steelers are still going to hold on to that division crown. And so the Cleveland Browns will be the number 5 seed and hold that number 1 wildcard spot. The number 6 wildcard spot is going to go to the Tennessee Titans. They have a game this week against the Detroit Lions, next week against the Green Bay Packers, in week 17 against the Houston Texans. They'll win 2 out of these 3 games to finish with a record of 11 wins and 5 losses. And then my last and final playoff spot, the final wildcard spot, is going to go to the Baltimore Ravens. That's right. Miami currently is the number 7 seed. And the way I have it, they would have to win out in order to make it into the playoffs. They have a game this week against the Patriots, next week against the Raiders, and week 17 against the Buffalo Bills. I have them winning 2 out of these 3 games to finish with a record of 10-6, whereas the Baltimore Ravens are going to win out the rest of their games. The Jaguars, the Giants, and the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, no competition really there for the Ravens. And they're going to finish with a record of 11-5 and sneak into the playoffs as the number 7 seed. So again, just to run through it, I have the Chiefs as the number 1 seed, the Bills at the number 2, Steelers number 3, and Indianapolis Colts at number 4. Those 4 teams are going to be the division winners. And then 3 wildcard spots, number 5, Cleveland Browns, number 6, Tennessee Titans, and number 7, Baltimore Ravens. Now moving over to the NFC side. Currently, the Green Bay Packers sit at the number 1 seed, thanks to the loss last week by the New Orleans Saints. I have them finishing with winning 2 out of their next 3 games and finishing with a record of 12-4. The current number 2 seed, the New Orleans Saints, win 1 out of their 3 games. Again, they play the Kansas City Chiefs this week, the Minnesota Vikings next week, who have literally dominated them these past few seasons in the playoffs, and the Carolina Panthers. So I have them winning 1 out of these 3 games and finishing with a record of 11-5. The Los Angeles Rams, again, another current division leader. They play this week against the Jets, next week against the Seattle Seahawks, and then week 17 against the Arizona Cardinals. I have them winning 2 out of these 3 games and finishing with a record of 11-5. The current number 4 seed, the division leader in the dumpster fire that is the NFC East, is the Washington football team. They have a game this week against the Seattle Seahawks, next week against the Carolina Panthers, and week 17 against the Philadelphia Eagles. I have them winning 1 out of these 3 games and finishing with a record of 7 wins and 9 losses. The current number 5 seed is the Seattle Seahawks. They have games against the Washington football team, the Los Angeles Rams, and the San Francisco 49ers. I have them winning all 3 of these games and finishing with a record of 12 wins and 4 losses. The current number 6 seed is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have game this week against the Atlanta Falcons, next week against the Detroit Lions, and Week 17 against the Atlanta Falcons. I have them winning 2 out of these 3 games and finishing with a record of 10 wins and 6 losses. The current number 7 seed is the Arizona Cardinals. They play this week against the Philadelphia Eagles, next week against the San Francisco 49ers, and Week 17 against the Los Angeles Rams. I have them winning 1 out of these 3 games and finishing with a record of 8 wins and 8 losses. The current number 8 seed, again this bubble team, that's if the season ended today, they would be on the outside of the playoffs looking in, is the Minnesota Vikings. They have a game this week against the Chicago Bears, next week the New Orleans Saints, and Week 17 against the Detroit Lions. I have them winning all 3 of these games and finishing with a record of 9 wins and 7 losses. I'll let you do the math right now. The current number 9 seed is the Chicago Bears. They have games against the Vikings, Jaguars, and Packers. They'll win 2 out of those 3 games and finish with a record of 8-8. The current 10 seed is the Detroit Lions. They have games against the Tennessee Titans, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Minnesota Vikings. I have them losing all 3 of those games and finishing with a record of 5-11. Number 11 is the San Francisco 49ers. They have games against the Dallas Cowboys, Arizona Cardinals, and Seattle Seahawks. I have them winning 2 out of those 3 games and finishing with a record of 7-9. And then lastly, the 12 seed is the New York Giants. They have games against the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens, and Dallas Cowboys. I have them winning 1 out of those 3 games and finishing with a record of 6-10. So all in all, where do I see these teams finishing? I have the Seattle Seahawks as the number 1 seed and getting that first round bye. The Green Bay Packers, the number 2 seed. The New Orleans Saints, the number 3 seed. The Washington Football Team at number 4. Those are all the division winners. And then for the wild card teams, I have the Los Angeles Rams finishing as the number 1 wild card team, seed number 5. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the number 6 seed. And Minnesota Vikings sneaking into the playoffs with a win in the last week to make it as the number 7 wild card team. Okay. So those are my playoff predictions. Let me know what you guys think either about Week 15 matchups or my playoff predictions. Again, this has been another fantastic episode of the Randall Handles Football Podcast. Thank you all for listening.
I don't care who you play, whether it's a high school team, a junior college team, a college team, much less an NFL team. When you turn the ball over 5 times, 4 interceptions, 1 for a touchdown, 3 others in field position to set up touchdowns, you ain't gonna beat anybody I just talked about. Anybody. All right? And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. What's that? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.